The Trump administration is unleashing the largest deportation campaign in American history, and it's happening right now in cities across the nation. Whether or not Trump can fulfill his promise of deporting 1 million people in a year, what's happening behind the scenes should concern every American. From military bases turned into detention camps to unprecedented interior raids targeting Democratic cities, we're witnessing a fundamental transformation of immigration enforcement that goes far beyond what anyone imagined. So what exactly is happening after someone gets arrested by ICE? And how is this reshaping the very fabric of American law enforcement? Let's break down what's really going on. To understand the scale of what's happening, we need to look at the numbers. Since Trump took office in January, ICE has conducted what officials call record-breaking immigration enforcement. In just the first 100 days, ICE arrested over 180,000 people and removed more than 65,000 immigrants to countries across the world. But here's what's really unprecedented. The administration isn't just focusing on border enforcement anymore. They've shifted to what they call interior deportations, meaning they're going deep into American communities, targeting people who have been living here for years, sometimes decades.
At least 20 people were detained outside in this parking lot in front of the Home Depot this morning. We do have video we want to show you. This was shared by a witness who was here and saw this all unfold. You can see what appears to be a person detained being walked through the lot by a federal agent. Then a car pulls up, and that person is placed inside. This happened around 9:30 this morning. You can see in the cell phone video federal agents that appear to be armed standing next to their truck as people are gathering video, and there's also what appears to be protesters standing outside on the other side of this fence. As these immigration operations continue, especially at local Home Depots.
Just this morning, federal agents detained approximately 20 people outside a North Hollywood Home Depot, including day laborers who gather there seeking work. Witnesses captured video of armed federal agents placing people in vehicles, while protesters gathered outside the fence. These aren't isolated incidents, they're part of a coordinated campaign happening in neighborhoods across America. The scope of this operation is staggering. Stephen Miller, Trump's deputy chief of staff and the architect of this immigration policy, has set a daily arrest quota of 3,000 migrants per day. When ICE officials couldn't meet those numbers, Miller reportedly berated senior officials and threatened to fire them if they didn't reach these targets. To put this in perspective, during September 2024 under the previous administration, ICE was arresting about 282 migrants per day. Trump's team wants to increase that by more than 10 times. But it's not just ICE doing the arresting anymore. The administration has created what they call Homeland Security Task Forces in all 50 states, pulling agents from multiple federal agencies. We're talking about 3,000 ICE agents, including 1,800 from Homeland Security Investigations, who normally investigate transnational crimes, not immigration violations. They've added 2,000 Justice Department employees from the FBI, U.S., Marshal Service, and Drug Enforcement Administration. Even 250 IRS agents are being used, some to provide information on immigrants' whereabouts using tax data, others with arrest authority. This represents a fundamental shift in federal law enforcement priorities. Resources that were once dedicated to investigating serious crimes like human trafficking, cybercrime, and drug cartels are now being redirected toward immigration enforcement, including what are essentially administrative violations for people who've overstayed visas or crossed the border without authorization. The Trump administration has also ended long-standing policies that restricted ICE arrests at sensitive locations like schools, hospitals, and churches. These protections, which had been in place since the Obama administration and were expanded under Biden, were designed to ensure public safety and maintain community trust. Now, ICE agents can make arrests anywhere, anytime. But perhaps the most dramatic change is where these arrested individuals are being held. The administration has embarked on an unprecedented expansion of detention facilities, including the use of military bases. Fort Bliss in Texas is being converted into the largest detention facility in the United States for civil detainees, capable of holding 5,000 people in tent-like structures.
There is, of course, Alligator Alcatraz in Florida. Well, today, Senator John Cornyn unveiled his nickname for the facility that's under construction here at Fort Bliss, calling it the Lone Star Lockup. Now, officially, the facility here is Camp East Montana, and it's expected to house up to 1,000 detainees when it officially opens next week. According to ICE, they've already started to accept a small number of detainees in preparation for the ramp up next week. Today, Cornyn did not go inside the new facility. He only examined it from the outside, and he said importantly here that this facility will not house children or families. He said it will be exclusively single adult men and women. And he said these are people who have pending deportation orders and have already exhausted every other legal option.
Senator John Cornyn recently visited the site and dubbed it the Lone Star Lockup, explaining that the facility will house adults who have criminal charges or convictions and have exhausted their legal options. The facility, officially called Camp East Montana, represents just one piece of a massive detention infrastructure being built across the country. Camp Atterbury in Indiana and Joint Base McGuire-Dix Lakehurst in New Jersey are being prepared to hold several thousand more migrants. Even Guantanamo Bay in Cuba is being expanded to double its detention capacity from 200 to 400 people. These aren't temporary holding facilities. The Pentagon has approved using these military bases through September 2025, with ICE maintaining 24/7 oversight at each site. The Department of Defense is funding these detention centers, which officials say offer everything a traditional ICE detention facility offers, including legal representation access and medical services. But critics argue that turning military bases into massive detention camps sets a dangerous precedent for using military resources for domestic law enforcement. Congress has allocated an unprecedented $170 billion for immigration enforcement and border security, with $75 billion specifically for ICE, making it by far the highest funded law enforcement agency in the federal government. This funding allows ICE to hire 0 additional deportation officers and expand detention capacity to 100,000 beds nationwide. The human impact of these operations is becoming increasingly visible.
We the People has been on 29-year-old Brian Gavidia's back for 6 years, but it wasn't until this moment that he says made him really understand what it meant.
Every time I see it on video, it just it's like a bad memory in my brain, 100%.
Agents were conducting an operation outside his shop on June 12th.
I just went to go look. Honestly, did not know it was a crime to go look.
The video shows one agent pushing Brian up against the wall and demanding he prove his citizenship.
I truly believe I was a target because of my race. I believe I was racially profiled. I believe I was attacked because I was walking while brown.
He says agents held him, took his phone and real ID that proved he was a citizen.
Take the case of Brian Gavidia, a 29-year-old U.S. citizen who was pushed against a wall by federal agents and demanded to show proof of citizenship outside a shop. Despite being an American citizen with a real ID, agents took his phone and questioned his status simply because of his appearance. Brian, who had actually voted for Trump, now describes feeling betrayed and manipulated, saying the president ran on lies about only targeting criminals. Recent arrests have targeted not just individuals with criminal records, but also longtime workers in agriculture, hospitality, and other industries. Trump himself acknowledged this tension, posting on social media that farmers and hotel businesses were losing very good, longtime workers who were almost impossible to replace. This led to temporary pauses in ICE raids at certain workplaces, but the broader enforcement campaign continues. The administration has also implemented what they call strategic transfers, moving detainees far from their families and lawyers to facilities in remote locations. This makes it extremely difficult for people to maintain contact with their support systems and access legal representation. Many detainees are being held in private prison facilities run by companies like GEO Group and Core Civic, which profit significantly from increased detention numbers. The geographic distribution of these operations reveals a clear pattern. Enforcement appears most aggressive in 5 southern states with Democratic-leaning cities: Texas, Florida, Georgia, North Carolina, and Virginia. About 43% of the 629 agreements between ICE and local law enforcement agencies are in Florida alone, followed by 14% in Texas. Meanwhile, deeply red rural states are seeing less activity, despite having experienced significant growth in immigrant populations in recent years. This targeting of Democratic cities isn't accidental. Trump has explicitly ordered ICE to expand efforts to detain and deport undocumented immigrants in cities like Los Angeles, Chicago, and New York, which he described as the core of the Democrat power center. The administration has threatened to cut federal funding from so-called sanctuary cities that don't cooperate with immigration enforcement. The legal and constitutional implications of these operations are profound. Immigration attorneys and civil rights organizations argue that the administration's tactics are eroding due process protections that have been in place for decades. Congressional leaders who recently visited a downtown LA detention center were deeply disturbed by the restrictions they faced. They weren't allowed to take photos or videos, couldn't speak to detainees, and were required to give 7-day advance notice for visits. A lawsuit is now underway to restore lawmakers' rights to make unannounced visits. The use of military bases for civil detention, the involvement of military personnel in domestic law enforcement, and the targeting of people based on political considerations all raise serious constitutional questions. Democrats have struggled to mount an effective response to these tactics. While some governors and mayors have criticized the operations and filed lawsuits, the federal government's immigration powers are extensive, and local officials have limited ability to interfere with federal operations. Some Democratic officials have described ICE's tactics as reminiscent of historical authoritarian regimes, but translating this criticism into effective political resistance has proven challenging. The broader implications extend beyond immigration policy. The militarization of immigration enforcement, the use of federal agents for what are essentially civil violations, and the targeting of specific communities based on political considerations represent a significant expansion of federal law enforcement power. This affects not just immigrants, but the relationship between federal and local governments, the role of the military in domestic affairs, and the balance between security and civil liberties. Public reaction has been mixed, but increasingly polarized. In some communities, particularly those with large immigrant populations, there's been significant protest and resistance. Los Angeles saw days of demonstrations following ICE raids, with hundreds marching from Olvera Street to the federal detention center.
With a clear message for ICE.
Stop terrorizing our community! Regardless of your color, we deserve due process. Our rights are being violated, and we need to stop it with this. Our people are getting kidnapped. Anybody with a mask can come right now as we're doing this interview and take you. Your family won't know where you're at. That should be concerning. Whether you're an immigrant or not an immigrant, our rights at risk. That is why I'm here today.
Some carrying upside-down American flags.
This flag, just the way it is, it's representing our nation in distress. We're witnessing an assault on the principles of freedom and liberty. This is just my way of saying that the nation needs to be more united.
Others held signs, chanted, and danced to live music blaring from a moving stage.
Protesters carried upside-down American flags as symbols of national distress, with one demonstrator warning about people being kidnapped without due process. The peaceful protesters included live music from a moving stage and powerful testimonials from community members about their concerns, prompting Trump to deploy both National Guard troops and Marines to deal with the protests.
Is once again exercising unprecedented authority as the nation's commander-in-chief. Today announcing he's placing Washington, D.C.'s police force under federal control and deploying the National Guard across the district. Flanked by his attorney general and defense secretary, the president painted Washington as crime-ridden and dirty, laying blame on the Democratic mayor of the city and the city council, and signing an executive order declaring a crime emergency in the city, even as data shows that crime substantially decreasing, while still at higher levels than other cities. Violent crime in the nation's capital has fallen 26% since the same time last year. In 2024, it was down 35% from the previous year. Now, by law, the president does have the authority to temporarily federalize D.C.'s police force. And as president, he also commands the D.C. National Guard, While announcing today's action, he also floated the possibility of taking another unprecedented step to call in the military.
The president has even declared a crime emergency in Washington, D.C., federalizing the D.C. Police Department and mobilizing additional National Guard units, claiming crime is ending today despite data showing violent crime has actually fallen 26% year over year. In other areas, particularly rural and conservative communities, there's been support for increased enforcement. The economic impact is also becoming apparent. Industries that rely heavily on immigrant labor, agriculture, construction, hospitality, and food processing, are reporting labor shortages and increased costs. Some businesses are struggling to find replacement workers, while others are facing scrutiny about their hiring practices. This has created tension within the Republican coalition between business interests that rely on immigrant labor and the base that supports aggressive enforcement. International implications are significant as well. The administration's deportation operations have strained relationships with countries that are receiving large numbers of deportees, particularly in Latin America. The use of military aircraft for deportations and the involvement of the Pentagon in domestic immigration enforcement have raised questions among allies about American democratic norms. Looking ahead, the sustainability of these operations remains uncertain. While the administration has secured significant funding, the logistical challenges of arresting, detaining, and deporting people on this scale are enormous. The legal challenges are mounting, with civil rights organizations filing multiple lawsuits challenging various aspects of the enforcement campaign. The political costs may also become apparent as the operations affect broader communities and economic sectors. The question of whether public outrage could slow the administration's most aggressive measures remains open. Historically, immigration enforcement has been somewhat insulated from public opinion, but the scale and visibility of current operations may change that dynamic. The involvement of military bases, the targeting of long-term residents, and the economic disruption caused by these operations could generate broader opposition. What's clear is that we're witnessing a fundamental transformation of how immigration enforcement works in America. The shift from border-focused operations to interior enforcement, the militarization of detention, the involvement of multiple federal agencies, and the targeting of specific communities represent changes that will likely have lasting effects regardless of future political developments. For individuals caught up in this system, the experience is often traumatic and disorienting. Families are separated, communities are disrupted, and people who have built lives in America over many years find themselves facing deportation to countries they may barely remember. The human cost of these operations extends far beyond those directly arrested, affecting entire communities and creating a climate of fear and uncertainty. The legal system is struggling to keep up with the volume of cases and the changes in enforcement priorities. Immigration courts, already facing massive backlogs, are being overwhelmed by new arrests. The changes to detention policies mean more people are being held for longer periods, making it harder for them to prepare air cases or maintain contact with family and attorneys. As this unprecedented deportation campaign continues, it's reshaping not just immigration policy, but fundamental aspects of American governance and society. The long-term consequences of militarizing immigration enforcement, targeting communities based on political considerations, and dramatically expanding federal law enforcement power will likely be felt for years to come. Whether American institutions can effectively respond to these changes and whether public opinion will ultimately constrain the most aggressive aspects of these operations remains to be seen. What's certain is that we're witnessing a transformation of American immigration enforcement that goes far beyond anything we've seen before, and its effects will ripple through American society for generations to come.